Hearing none, does anyone in the audience wish to address this? Yes, sir, in the green shirt.
Like a month ago.
Yes, please come up and give us your name and address.
No.
And please, nobody get offended if I call you by your color of shirt. That's the best way I know to identify who. Go ahead.
My name is Sean Cummings. I live at 23 Slater Street, right over here. I'm an IT person, and I'm planning to probably work for a third-party employer as a help desk employee. My entire work would be at home, answering phone calls from remote services, so I would then remote in other people's computers. But my home would be my office, but I would not be working for myself. I'd be working for a third-party employer. How does this all address that?
Mr. Dyer?
Sure. Currently, for current regulations, you would need a home occupational permit, and under the proposed regulations, you would again need a home occupational permit. You'd be a type 2. Under our proposed regulations, what all we needed would be fill out the permit application, certify that you understand the use limitations, provide us a name and contact for you, and that would be it.
Right. And so it doesn't matter if you're your own business or you work for a third party, as long as if you do all your work from home, that's what's needed.
Correct. That's exactly, you are correct, yes.
Thank you.
Next. Do you still wish to speak?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
My name is Sheldon Golden. I am at 5222 England Street. I have a photography business. Just had a few questions. So reducing the analysis of accepting occupational permits will be done by the staff now versus the planning committee. Will the staff be adequately trained to be able to manage this as well as, if not better than, the planning committee has in the past?
They already are.
They are. Okay. Vehicle signage. As I understand it, what you mentioned was you can only have your name and phone number. Can we amend that to have website address added to that?
That is an excellent question. We would count, I think that's, we had this, staff had this same kind of conversation. We'd count that under, if you came in today and went up, we'd count it underneath the telephone number, serving the same purpose. But if there's a desire by the planning commission to add that in there, that would certainly be, from the staff's perspective, certainly be acceptable.
And then a few slides back you had regarding renewal fees. I think you said no change, that there would be no renewal fees?
Correct. There are no renewal fees for the permit. Now again, there is also the Merriam occupational license. That's the annual fee that folks have to pay.
Okay. So that's
right.
That's not changing.
If you're a type,
the business license.
If it's a type 2, and this, again, then that would not be changing. That's correct.
And just out of curiosity, regarding the visitor restrictions, the changes to that, have they been born out of complaints, or is it just to go along with what other townships are doing?
I would say a little bit of both. Again, when we talk to residents and ask about home occupation, their concern is the number and the amount of traffic that's coming from into the residential area. So that's what that's born out of. We looked at what's the standard that other communities have. 10 would seem to be the higher level standard, and so again, that's where the 10 comes from.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Dennis Miles. I live at 9213 West 48th Street. I own Stay Safe Locksmiths. I have a occupation permit for my business. My business is not in the home. I don't work in my home. I work in my van. And right now, my van is out in your parking lot. And so That's where my office is. But I'm required to have a permit to park my van in my driveway. And with the new signage, I'm in violation of that because of the fact that I have artwork on my van, which extends the 6-foot rule. Is there a way of getting around that?
That's an excellent point. You know, perhaps the desire would be to do a percentage on the amount on there, or increase the amount of square footage that's allowed on there. Again, the primary purpose of the reduction in square footage was to, as we talked about the last meeting, was in regards to car wraps and things like that, which are prevalent. So, again, planning commission may want to have a discussion about increasing the size of that or doing something different.
Mr. Darrow, would his not come under the grandfathering?
Oh, yes, no, his is grandfather.
Yeah, so yours would be grandfather, no change.
That is correct. You are correct. Thank you.
But the thing about it is that I don't have any customers come to my residence. I don't want customers coming to my residence. I'm a commercial locksmith. I go to commercial buildings and do lock work. In my van has a computer. I do all my building in my van. I keep all my materials in my van. And my van is my business. You know, so under some of the agreements, you know, you said we're talking about bringing work home. I answer the phone, this phone. Right now, if a call came in, it would ring here. So I don't consider my residence being a office in the home at all.
Well, I would split hairs with you, and everybody else can take whatever they want, but
I don't mind
you park your vehicle on your property,
on my property.
and your residence is on your property. They are both a part of your property, therefore you have a home office on your property.
But a lot of the people bring their company vehicles home and park their company vehicles on the street.
But they also do not work out of them.
Oh yeah, they, you know, plumbers,
But
electricians, painters, all those people that work out of their vehicles, you know, do all those professions, bring their vehicles home with them. There's several people around my general area that do stucco, carpeting.
if they are independently working for themselves, even if they park that van on the street, they should have a home occupation license.
That's exactly my point.
Agreed. Agree with you.
But since they don't have any signs on their vehicle,
It is extremely difficult to catch someone or to
you see, I have
identify someone under those conditions.
I have a, right next door to me, they take care of the handicap. Okay? And under the restrictions of having one employee come to the residence, they have nursing staff that go in and out of that building all day long and all night long, you know, and they park on the street. Is this requirement going to stop them from parking on the street? Are they going to have to park in their driveways? Are they going to be able to have more than one nurse come into that residence?
Mr. Durham?
But that is for your next topic.
That
It's a
comes,
very different topic,
that comes under the
group homes.
group home that we have coming up as the next amendment.
Thank you for your time.
Uh-huh. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Sam Machir. I live at 8515 West 57th Street. And glad you're having this public hearing. There's a lot of people very interested in this. There is something I want to say first that is maybe my only opportunity to say this because I can talk to the commission. And that is that it's difficult for the public to get notice of when things are happening. And I would imagine, I publish a newsletter called What's Happening in Merriam City Hall. And a lot of people are here tonight because they read that newsletter. And I noticed that in the highlight from Merriam and in the Facebook and in all the various documents, they have a tremendous communication system for the city of Merriam, and nothing is said, or if I couldn't find it, is said about public hearings. And that's probably why people don't show up at public hearings. And I would ask this commission to consider finding a way to make people aware of this.
Mr. Chair, I would differ with you on one thing. We seem to have no trouble having people show up for public hearings, if you will notice what's in the here now. And this is very common, and I think everybody up here will say the same thing. This is very common anytime we have anything that has any type of significance to the residents. We have large meeting attendance constantly. So I do believe that somehow or another, it's getting out to people.
Okay, well, that's fine. I would
Please go
ask.
ahead.
Sure. And as people speak, they may want to describe how they heard about it, so you can adjust what you do.
Well, they get what you heard, what you put out, but go ahead, please.
Okay. I received because of this newsletter, I received a lot of comments. And I'll just read one of them. Dear Sam, I'd likely be able to attend the meeting. I do find this an invasion of privacy. I recently moved to Merriam. Had I known of this type of community I would have not bought my home here. This does not make it an inviting community. In 2000, and then this is interesting, she taught me something. In 2017, approximately 34% of people worked from home. This is up from 2012 when it was about 25%. So things are changing. More and more people are working from home. This will affect a lot of people who are just working from home and not running a business. They are in a way or is the city saying that and then she talks about a housewife, she works and so does she have to, and obviously we're not going to do that. And so I might expand on one thing. I said, well, would you tell me the source of this? What do you mean that 34%? It was an astounding number to me. And she told me it was in the New York Times, it was a Gallup poll, and it is, and at least that's what they say, 43% of all residents work from home at some time of the year. Now, in Merriam, we have 5,200 homes. That would mean 1,800 homes have businesses, do business there sometime. Of course, you're saying, well, we want to talk about the people that work here all the time. 31% of all residents, according to the Gallup poll, in the New York Times, work from home, 80 to 100% of the time, 31% of the people. So in Merriam, what would that be, 31% of 5,200? That's a lot of folks. We don't have the codes administration to do that. And if we don't go get all 1,800 or 1,500 people, then we're being unfair to those people that do have a license. So I think what's happening is we're behind the times here in Merriam, and probably some of the other cities are too. And I think what happens here tonight will make a difference in other cities because they'll follow us. And I hope we'll catch up with the times. There are many other comments. Sometimes it's not what you say, but who says it. Now, this was rather interesting. He wrote to me, he says, the senior poet laureate of the state of Kansas, winner of the Kansas I can't say it, Award for Literature, the William Rockwell Nelson Award for Fiction, and he goes on and on and on. And then ends by saying, is no longer welcome in Merriam? Fine. I'll cross the state line and leave Merriam to the idle, the office workers, and the student. Now, he's a poet, I don't go so much by what he says, perhaps it's tongue-in-cheek, but what's important is, here's the poet laureate of Kansas, and we're telling him, you have to get a business license.
Mr. Chair, we'd like to have your comments rather than those. If they were that comfortable or uncomfortable with what we were doing, they should have sent those letters to the city so that we would see them. So if we would have just your comments, I would appreciate it.
Okay, my comments are, first of all, much of what we heard from the staff this evening, if I were in a court, I would say, you can't consider it in your decision. And the reason is because what happens is not what an interpretation or what is said, but what is in the law. And I believe strongly in that we govern by law, we do not govern by personalities or people. And much of what was said tonight is not in the law. You know, for instance, kilns and home and industrial equipment. It doesn't say that you can have things that are not domestic. So that's not right. You know, it has to be written. If you want that to be the law, it has to be written. I believe, and many other people believe, that there's no place for a type 2 license anymore. These people have zero impact on the business, on the neighborhood. Why should we license a poet laureate? Why should we license someone who works from their office? At one time in Merriam, I worked in my home and I sold test equipment. I had boxes about this size that cost $10,000. You don't find that in the normal home. And according to this and what's said here, I couldn't have done it. I don't do it anymore, but I couldn't have done it then. So I think that's what you have to consider.
Mr. Matera, that's not correct. You could have done it. The only thing you would have had to have done would have been let the city know that you were doing it.
Okay, I would have had to have gone by a type 2 license, a type 1 license.
No, a 2.
Okay, well, then I would be taking equipment that is not, that is more industrial, and you wouldn't find a $10,000 piece of equipment in a home.
You were not utilizing the equipment at home. You were selling it.
Well, all right, well, it doesn't, but okay, that's fine, it's an interpretation.
Your 5 minutes is up, sir, so if you get 1 or 2 sentences, please.
Okay, let me just look at my notes.
You could have my 5 minutes.
No, I'm sorry, we can't do it that way.
Okay, and I hope you'll look at the New York Times and you will consider that the times have changed. We're in a different place. Now, and the other thing that is really is a problem is that now people can come to the Planning Commission and receive their decision. With this change, people will have to go to the staff, and the staff will make the decision. Now, you've heard staff make comments tonight on what would do and what wouldn't do, but what matters is what's in the law. We can't count on our current staff from being there. Might get a big raise, get an offer for somebody else, and then we've got a new staff member making decisions. So I think that is a bad deal, and and this planning commission needs to make decisions when it affects somebody's livelihood.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The comment on that, though, is that there is a right of appeal of anything that the staff does. You can then bring it to the Planning Commission for appeal.
Yes, and that would take 60 days, and the person could be out of business and lose a contract.
Sir, if you had to come to the Planning Commission to start with, it would take 60 days. Because you have to apply for anything with the Planning Commission to be put onto the agenda, and it takes approximately 60 days, depending on what day of the month you come to. So an appeal is no different. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
My name is Brian. I live at 97-4 West 49.
Last name, please.
Brian Dutchins. I had a couple questions. I'm looking for some clarification on things. You mentioned the type 1s. They went from originally allowing a once-a-month meeting to 10 customers a day and 3 at once. Does that still include the once-a-month meeting as well? I imagine the purpose of that was like a business gathering.
No, it does not include the once a month.
So that's been dropped?
Yes.
Okay. How are you guys determining the 20% usage of space if it's something like working from home for a third party? I mean, is that, because if I'm working from home for a third party, I can do everything I need to on this desk. I have a phone, I have a computer. But if I'm in a room this size, because I knocked all the walls out of my house. I mean,
I'll give you an example. I have had a stained glass studio in my basement. I can tell you what the square footage of that basement that was utilized for stained glass as opposed to the total square footage of the house. Excuse me. I, as the one coming for the permit, would then, when I come in, I would be asked, well, is this more than 20%? Well, here's the square footage both ways. No, it's not.
Okay.
That's how it's calculated.
So if I can like just pile everything on myself and get
Oh,
it
yeah,
solid.
yeah.
okay.
I mean, even if you go, well, it's all in one room. This is my office room, this is my computer room. You figure the square footage of that room and then
Okay.
compare it to the total of the house.
And then I think a lot of this also fell under stuff that didn't change. I was just hoping for clarification. There's both permits and licensing.
Correct.
The type 2s require the permit.
Type 1 requires both. Type 2 currently requires both, but we have been asked and will consider requesting that the city council change it to where type 2 will not require an occupational license.
Okay, so the license is the one that costs me money per year.
Correct.
Okay, and so I guess then my actual question, with all of these changes so far, like, is there anything that got worse for a type 2?
Not that I can think of.
I mean, because I
don't
tried
believe
starting
so.
a business a little while ago, and it was a giant pain in the ass. And,
Yeah, believe me,
like,
I've been there.
And
I
guess,
have one, I know.
To Sam's point, and you finding out, like, I heard about this from next door, and like everybody was up in arms on that. It just sounded like you guys were trying to be a giant pain in the ass, and it's not.
Well, evidently, the appropriate information that was what was actually in what was provided and what we discussed last meeting was not understood and was disseminated incorrectly, so sorry about that.
Okay. So nothing new, negative? That's fine.
Glad to hear it. Thank you, sir.
That's all I got. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jordan Gomez. I live at 9900 West 70th Street. And I currently have the type 1 home occupation. I have a sewing business in my home. I mostly do sewing production, where I pick up and drop off in other locations. But I'm also a sewing instructor. And I have sewing lessons at my home. And I have sewing workshops that involve more than 3 people at a time. So I'm wondering if I'm grandfathered into the
Yes, you
monthly
do have a,
gap.
you do have a conditional use permit right now. You're on Cary?
I'm on 70th Street.
Yeah.
I do, yeah,
you
I have that
one
right now,
So
yeah.
yes, you are grandfathered in.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you. Yes, sir.
All right. My name is Billy Brook, and I've lived at Merriam, lived in a residential neighborhood in Merriam at 6633 West Street since I bought my house here in 2014. I enjoy the residential character of my neighborhood, and I think we're lucky in Merriam to have a city that cares to preserve that, and to preserve the tranquility, and that these neighborhoods don't become strip malls or have quick trips or convenience stores pop up. I've read the current ordinance and the proposed update, and I believe it definitely is an improvement, especially listening to the points outlined tonight. It is markedly better than what we had, but I feel it doesn't go far enough to protect the liberty of our residents to use their homes in a peaceful, quiet manner, to maintain their privacy, and to preserve the tranquility of our neighborhoods that it's intended to preserve. That tranquility being the start of the actual ordinance, and then the ordinance goes on to make all these restrictions on businesses. Well, there's a lot of things that can disrupt the tranquility of a neighborhood that aren't a business. It could be a noisy hobby that somebody isn't engaging in any commerce in, and they wouldn't need a home occupation permit for that, but it could still be a distraction or disruption. And then, of course, there's many businesses that don't cause those problems. What I think might be more efficient would be to have an ordinance that outlines specific nuisance activities that aren't allowed in residential neighborhoods, and to enforce that fairly on anyone that is in a residential neighborhood, whether they're a business or not. And once that sort of a framework is in place, there no longer would be a need for a home occupation permitting program. I think the fairest way to do it would be to have the same rules apply to everyone. I think those rules should have to be clear and objective. They have to be something that could be measured or enumerated from the public right-of-way, or something that can be observed from a neighbor who's complaining about a problem. Like,
Let me stop you. We already have those.
okay.
So those are actually in there, and that was the one that we were talking about, that no specific noise, dust, dirt, things of that nature. Those are already contained in the general ordinances for even living in the city. So me as your next door neighbor can't get out there and play my whatever type of music at 150 or 300 decibels without getting in trouble for it.
Okay.
So those things are already in the ordinance.
I'm glad to hear that. And my suggestion then would be just to take anything that is in the home occupation section that isn't already in that other section, merge it in, and then at that point, the home occupation section becomes largely redundant. We can simplify code. We can reduce administrative overhead of maintaining these permits. And I really think that would be more fair. Although I understand that that's not what council asked you to do. They asked you to update the, correct me if I'm wrong, but just to update the home occupation ordinance. And if that is the limit of what you're able to do, I would ask then that there be a section in the home occupation ordinances that says businesses that meet all those criteria, basically being non-existent as far as anyone knows. It's not, it's, if you drive down the street and you can't see it, that those people be excluded from even having a license, which I think was going to be recommended to council. Is that correct?
Yes.
But the other things I had was, I would like the ordinance to not enumerate any specific occupations or tools, because that limits us over the course of time as things
They're
change.
not limited. If you find in the ordinance, every one of them says,
If, for example,
or other, I don't
including but
remember what
not
the exact
limited to.
wording is, but not limited to,
Yes.
that's the wording. So those are just examples, and there are innumerable others that will go with it. So
And-
that wording, not limited to, is your key to that.
Yeah, but like, for instance, let's say there's, programmer was one that was listed, that isn't included as a type 2. But what if you're programming some sort of a computer that actually is a nuisance, that creates vibrations or whatever?
If it does, then it comes under the nuisance ordinances.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. It just makes me still think that there's redundancy in the codes, and we could simplify it. The example heard today about three-phase power. That's, it's a type of electricity, it's a different type of outlet plug. Having that in the house doesn't necessarily mean it's commercial. There are people, especially in woodworking, that have.
No, this is just used by the staff to alert, to look and see what it is used for.
Yes.
It's like watching traffic coming down the street. If you've got one house where there's somebody shows up every 20 minutes from midnight till 4 o'clock in the morning, the police wonder what's going on. That's kind of the same thing. If you've got that three-phase coming in, then the staff's going to wonder what's going on. They're going to say, hey, what is that? Oh, that's just my woodworking equipment. Oh, okay. Or, no, that's my commercial oven. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
That's all it's used for.
As a resident, though, it doesn't strike me as any of my business if somebody has an oven in their house, a commercial oven or commercial equipment. I don't know why I would want to limit my neighbors.
Because you're talking about fire codes then.
If it's operated safely, it's
But
not.
who knows if it's going to be operated safely. Your 5 minutes are up. I'll give you about another minute if you've got one more comment.
All I had left to say was that Merriam is, our slogan's just right, but I don't think that means that we can't try to improve things. I know this proposed ordinance is an improvement, but I think we can go even further. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Susan Beers, and I live at 5523 Perry Lane. And I have an in-home daycare. And
This
we,
is, just a sec, I should have said this beginning, but this is not daycare.
This does not affect
This
you
is
in
not
any
daycare
way.
at all.
okay, well, with the hours that you have,
Again, this is
There's
not
nothing in
daycare.
this affects you in any way.
I should have said that earlier, I apologize.
And it doesn't
This
say-
has nothing to do with daycare. Daycare is a whole other section. So
Okay.
I apologize, I should have said that to begin my presentation. This is not daycare.
okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I want to say you did a really good job of explaining what this program involved.
Thank you.
Okay. My name is Diane Austin. I live at 8903 West 48th Street, Merriam. And when I first heard about this, got the first letter, I was very upset. Now, listening tonight, I'm not quite as upset. But I still feel like Sam said and Mr. Went, I'm at the point when we went through the trash cans and all this stuff, and I thought, oh my gosh, I got it from all my friends. Oh, you live in Merriam, where all the trash cans, you can't have your trash cans. Well, it was pretty upsetting to me, because I think of our town, I've been here 45 years, I've lived in the same house, and we lived perfectly ever after, without anyone being concerned about our trash cans. But I'm not talking about that. So now I'm up here tonight because I'm thinking, there's a lot of people, I don't want anyone coming into my house and seeing if I have a certain plug or something. I think that what they do, I honor what my neighbors have done for 45 years. We haven't had a fire. We haven't had any of these things. These are people that have their own private lives. If they want to share it with me, that's fine. But I don't have to know what they're doing. It's their house, their privacy. If it's a hobby or whatever, and I feel like hobbies are getting kind of limited here. You know, if it's just a hobby thing and you sell once in a while, and am I going to be afraid that, oh, somebody might tell on me? I don't want our neighbors to start feeling that way about each other. We in Merriam did wrong. I mean, did you really have a lot of complaints about this?
Well, I think what you're going to find is, and as was acknowledged, is that what we have done is actually relaxed what we have had for years. These regulations were originally in place in, what, 1970 something?
But we're in 20.
Please,
Okay. Go
and
ahead.
what we have done, and what has to be done incrementally, you cannot just automatically throw out a regulation. What we are trying to do is come into this knowing that there are a lot of people that work from home, trying to do it gradually where we can test this and see how it works. If a couple of years down the road it looks like there's no use for that, this home office type of thing, we may come back and think about it again. But we cannot just automatically drop it. There are things that people can do in their homes as a business, and I will give you a good example. Someone can be a gunsmith in his home, and he can keep in that home an enormous amount of ammunition, which is not a problem, and powder. And that is important in a neighborhood because it is such a tremendous fire hazard. If it's done right, if it's handled properly, it's not a problem. But it's also something that the fire department needs to know. If there is a fire, they need to know that that is there before they go into that house. These are the types of things that this ordinance is meant to not control, but to provide knowledge of, so that people won't get hurt, so that you as a neighbor won't get hurt and things like that. But we have to do this on an incremental basis. We cannot just automatically blanket say, oh, it's going to be okay, and drop it.
Well, I grant it, you have made some steps to correct some of this, But still, I can't see where you can control what someone does after they get their license or whatever in their home. They can still have fires, they can still accidentally do something else. The thing is, I don't know how many people, how much problem have these Title or Type 1s, how many incidents do you have in the fire department or whatever that have been a problem in Merriam?
The Type 1 businesses, we have a fair amount of complaints. and
Yes, we do. Typically with contractors. Contractors are our biggest thing. We get a lot of
Contractors
neighbors
are the
complaining
biggest
about
thing.
contractors.
So,
And again, let's make sure, as the chair said, these are regulations that have been in place for a very long time and we're relaxing.
yes, and I understand that, and I've done a good job with that. But I'm sorry, I can't see people having to do all these little things that, I know something can happen, but something can happen to someone who has this license too. I mean, anything can happen, and neighbors will complain to you or to the city or to the police or the fire department or someone, and they'll get investigated. Probably more than you guys will with the license, because you already think that they're doing everything okay. But maybe they're not. And sometimes this will keep people from not letting anyone know what they're doing, because they want their privacy. I feel like I've been in Merriam 45 years and I love it.
And you don't have a problem of any kind with what is already in existence, which we are actually loosening up. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for trying to listen.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Tammy Pittman, Stolman. Pittman rings a bell because we used to have Pittman moving down in Merriam for 54 years. It's
And
called,
address? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I am currently at 10104 West 55th Street on Merriam, in Merriam. Invasion of privacy. I just have some statements. Gross. Baron BMW. Invasion. Let's think about it. What are we doing in Merriam? I just hope that somebody will come to the realization that we're all human and we don't need to make more rules. The rule book is already full. And invading on people's privacy, you know, it's just not fair. And I just don't understand why Merriam has to continue to do different things to hurt their mom and pop businesses. We're gone. My mom made a decision in 5 to sell out. Best decision in her life. But it was sad because we were pushed by the city. And you're going to continue to push people until nobody wants to live here. And I was so taken back by the Merriam brochure that I just got to remember what the name of it is, but you send out the Merriam and all of the different artifacts about the history in Merriam Park. And let's go back. I know that we can't, I know that there has to be rules and regulations, but why continue to add to them and invade? We're in America. We need to be able to make some of our own decisions when we are taxpayers and not have the city make all the decisions and dictate to us what we can and can't do inside of our own home that we pay taxes in. Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else? Fletcher. No check, sorry. Whatever, the blue one.
Ben Goforth, 8424 Johnson Drive. I have lived at that address for 1 year and 3 months. Glad we had the Pledge of Allegiance because that goes back to this country's roots. Laissez-faire is a French term that our founding fathers used when they stated in the Bill of Rights papers about giving people their privacy and their ability to obtain and control possessions as well as the fruits of their labors and their businesses. It seems like I keep hearing over and over a lot of the issues that all of this stuff was created for are about nuisances. And then we have nuisances laws. So I keep hearing some of these guys saying, why do we need both? If somebody's creating a nuisance, you've already got the nuisance law. Why do we have to do this? So why are we invading people's privacies? And enforcement itself, okay, so I lived there for a year and 3 months. In one day, I was moving into my house and I got a citation for having a van that I was moving. The guy, I swear, the van was there on Sunday. He had a letter in the mail on Monday, and I got it on Tuesday. I couldn't even move. I had the same trailer in my yard while I was doing landscaping. Again, it was there on the weekend while I was working in my yard. I had a letter on Tuesday, so he had to see it on Monday, write a letter, get it in the mail. Yet, I don't have a problem with that if I'm doing it all the time, but I have a problem with it if you can't enforce it all around. I can walk around my block and see 5 different instances where those same rules have been there, where the same trailers have been there violating the same rules, and that guy won't do anything about it. But he'll come to my house. So I want you to stay out of my business unless I'm making a nuisance. And if you're going to have laws, I want you to enforce them all around. And I want you to look at the Constitution and see what it says about businesses letting people do business. Any questions about that?
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. Don't trip.
I'm Lori Mack, 79 West 60th Terrace, where I've lived for 15 years. And first of all, I'm one of the happier Merriam residents. I brag about living in Merriam to everybody I meet because I love Team Merriam whisking down my street with the snowplow. I love the services. I try to shop in Merriam. And, okay, well, I can go on for a while, but I won't. I do appreciate the presentation from Mr. Dyer tonight because I heard, well, I saw a lot of neighbors with their hair on fire recently because of changes to, and proposals to changes. And the presentation relieved me that the council and the commission is trying to make improvements and relaxing regulations to to benefit residents and, like I say, the quality of our neighborhoods. So I appreciate that our neighborhoods have, you know, peace and quiet, and people watch out for each other, and it's a good place to live. So I like the clarification. However, just being here tonight and hearing different people commenting on different examples and circumstances, I've gotten a little confused, to be honest, because when I look at what's in writing, it seems fairly clear. But when I hear different examples, and I hear, well, that's an exception, oh, that doesn't apply for you, well, it does apply to this, but not to that, oh, this is grandfathered in. So I guess what I wanted to say and plead is to mirror what the earlier neighbor said, is that we need clarity, and we need things in writing to be specified, so that, and measurable, so we know what we're doing, okay? Because I don't think Merriam residents want to be out of compliance, and we don't want to be nuisances. We want to be good neighbors, but we also want to have good quality of life and be able to, you know, support ourselves in whatever way we can, okay? Let me just give you one little story. I use the Merriam website when I have questions about rules and ordinances and services and whatnot. And it's a fairly decent website. And aside from coming in here during working hours, which means, you know, not doing my work, but coming to find answers, I don't really know any other way to get, you know, to the bottom line of the written contract between the city and the residents. And so when I considered beginning a small business, I went to the website and tried to figure out, okay, what am I supposed to do? What do I have to do for, you know, federal government, the state, the county, and Merriam? And I wanted to start with Merriam because it's where I live and it's important to me. And when I looked at what was written, it like, wow, pretty much everybody needs to get a license and a permit. So I came to the office to talk with staff, and I spoke with no fewer than 4 people because, you know, they're all very friendly, to be honest. And I said, I think I need a license if I'm going to start this business next year, but I'm not quite sure. This is what I want to do. And the first person I talked with said, no, I don't think so, but talk with this fellow. And that person said, maybe, but I'm not sure. Talk with this fellow, okay? And it went on for a couple, and I walked out that day thinking, I don't need it. I don't need anything. I'm in the clear, so, you know, do what I do. Meanwhile, I'm still in the planning phase, but do you see where I'm talking about? We need to be able to know and have solid ground to be able to stand on. And so if things are in writing and measurable and you know.
And that's exactly what a lot of these clarifications we're trying to put in here, so that you can look at it and see what it says and what you have to do and what you can't do. I will tell you also, when you were talking about what's been said here, we've had 2 or 3 people that have come in and asked questions about items that don't fall under home occupation. Group homes, daycare, homes for invalids, things of these nature. They have their own separate set of regulations. So that's where you get told, well, this doesn't apply to you. So that's one of the things that you've been hearing. The other thing is, and you might have missed it when Mr. Dyer started with that, is that these, if they are passed, will take effect on any new businesses coming in after the date of these regulations. So therefore, you know, somebody gets told, oh no, you're grandfathered in.
I will make a little clarification on that. As I mentioned last year, we identified, actually, the city clerk and the finance department identified some home occupations that did not have those conditional use permits. We sent all those folks a letter, said, hey, know you're out there, but we're revising our regulations. Let us revise our regulations, and then we'll get back to you. So there is a group of folks out there who are in operation that don't have conditional use permit or any type of home occupation permit. We're simply waiting for these to be updated, so then we can approach them with the appropriate information. So just a little, let me make that clarification.
But that's essentially, and it's still the requirement for a new permit.
Right.
So basically, if anyone already has a home occupation that's under a permit, they're grandfathered in.
Correct.
And any new is not. So that's where you're getting these mixed signals.
Mr. Locksmith, I didn't catch his name. I can't even call him, I get locked out.
Right.
But his case, the point was, entirely confusing, because to me, he doesn't have a home business. He has a transportation to his home where he parks his transportation, and then he takes that office and moves it to his place of business. So it was really confusing. I don't understand that, at least.
Not to rehash this, because we rehashed this already, but he gets his understanding, it's been a while, the majority of the decision was based upon the fact, I think he gets his billings and stuff at that location. I also believe that's where he had his registration with the state of Kansas at that place too.
Okay, so I guess I'm back to, we all need a permit and a license, because I leave for work, I come home, I'm using the vehicle, I might make a, use my mobile phone.
There's a major difference. There's a major
It's hard to
difference.
say.
Thank you,
So
ma'am.
I just look for some clarification in the written ordinances and whatnot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like.
I have a question.
No. Last call. Yes, ma'am. One to a customer, sir.
I'm Vicki Bisbee, and I live at 10105 West 69th Street in the far reaches of Merriam. Hypothetical question. If I wanted to start a wild tree business, which is one of those in-home party things where girls get together, make 10 dinners or 20 dinners. If they all come to my house, I would be in violation of the 10 people.
Let me ask this question though. As was said earlier, is that your primary source of income, or provides a substantial portion of your income, or is that simply something you're doing to augment or something?
Hopefully, it would be primary source of income at some point.
Right. Then at that point in time, it would rise to the level of a home occupation. And again, that would not be allowable to have a group of more than 3.
Okay, so why could I not gather with those people? I guess I know the answer to this. But my next door neighbors can have a party every Friday night or Saturday night with 30 or 40 people. And if I have 10 people at my house, I would be in violation.
Again, the thing is, those folks are your neighbors, having big parties, they aren't doing it for an income or for profit, while as your situation is going to be for a commercial nature.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Ma'am, sir, I'm sorry, I can't tell from here what you are. Ma'am, gotcha when you got close enough.
Soraya Rose, 9508 West 60th.
Hang on a second.
Is that better?
There you go, thank you.
Soraya Rose, 9508 West 60th. I was just wondering, I'm a disabled veteran. I have a 2-foot by 4-foot workbench, and I make lamps. But it's kind of between a hobby and a business. Would that require me to be type 2 permit?
That goes back to the same question. Do you derive the majority of your income from it?
Most of my
Then
income
no, you
is from
don't.
disability.
Then no, you don't.
From what I heard, that's simply a hobby, and that's a situation that we discussed. There's a lot of folks that do exactly like that. They
Well, I mean,
have
I
hobbies
do
and
have
stuff like that.
a business card, I have a Facebook page, but I don't do that much business.
Right, so no, we would definitely consider that to be a hobby. And so, no, that doesn't rise to the level of needing a home occupation.
Okay. Thank you.
Last call, anyone else?
Thank you for your service.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Haynes Nichols. I live at 9903 West 70th Terrace. I'd just like to say, I was really fired up about this a few days ago, but then I did some research and I read the ordinance and I read the proposed ordinance and I watched a video of last month's meeting here, and I think everyone is really doing a good job at trying to make as little impact on local businesses as possible. And I recognize that you guys are loosening and relaxing the rules on this and actually attempting to make it easier for businesses to operate out of their home. And I'm not sure why so many people are getting so agitated when clearly you're trying to make this easier for everyone. So I just wanted to say thank you for trying to make this easier for people running home businesses. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Last call. Seeing no one else, I will close this public hearing portion of it. I'm going to call a 5-minute recess, and then we will discuss and see what we're going to do.
It's just the killing.
I can't hear very well. Sure.